A Firing, Quitting and Downsizing Guide. Chapter 1. Get fired or quit gracefully. Firing someone 1. If you have a bad employee, nip it in the bud. Start the procedure to get rid of him or her rather than not deal with it, because problem employees are bad for the company morale. If you have to fire somebody, don't do it for petty reasons because you will lose respect with the other workers. Do it for job-related failure, nothing else, because you will get in trouble if you fire someone for less than honorable reasons. Fire them face to face. Do it both verbally and with a written report which you give them to read and ask them to sign, then you give them a copy and keep the other. Try to do it quickly at the end of the day. Tell them to clean out their effects, give them their pay and severance check and get them out of there. Be as civil and compassionate as you can even if you hate the employee you're firing. Tell them why, but be diplomatic, saying something like, "It didn't work out." Never do it while you're angry. Cool off if you're mad and think it through. Always do it in private. Call him in, preferably at the end of the day when no one else is around. Fire him so he doesn't have the embarrassment of facing the others. As soon as you're on the outs, everybody else will start to avoid you regardless of how good you were as friends. If the worker pleads with you or cries, use discretion as to whether you will give them just one more chance, but be firm about it. There are laws regarding firing an employee. In the US, it's dol.gov, in Canada, it's the Employee Standards Act of the Ministry of Labour, our.hrdc.gc.ca, 800-567-6866. You have to have just cause to fire someone, and the best way is to keep personnel files on all employees documenting their exemplary behaviors, their negative behaviors and little indiscretions like coming in late often, calling in sick, etc. If you dismiss an employee wrongfully, you could be charged under labor laws, human rights laws and civilly for defamation of character and wrongful termination. Proactive firing is good sense. You get rid of problems before they get a chance to cause extensive damage. Everybody in the company usually knows when a colleague is not up to standard, including the individual himself. Quick action is the best course of action, and it gets the individual out of a situation he is not cut out for to move on to something better suited to him. So, in my opinion, termination, like divorce, is a good thing, because it shows where you're not meant to be. Some reasons for involuntary terminations are as follows. Your business may not be doing so hot. Somebody has got to go. Your business changes. The old timers can't seem to catch on to the new ways of doing things or don't want to. Bad attitude, talks too much, nuisance to other employees, farts out loud, smells bad, etc. Can't or doesn't want to do the job. Just cause reason that allow for immediate termination, like disruption of the normal flow of business, criminal activity, sexual harassment, drunk on the job, discrimination, belligerent, obnoxious behavior, chronic absences and / or lateness, compromise of safety in the workplace, long-term physical or mental illness that prevents the employee from carrying out the job most of the time, misuse of business property, surfing the internet for fun, using the company car for your own benefit, abusing the expense account, etc. Firing someone 2. The most common legitimate reasons for termination are absenteeism and tardiness, broke company rules, didn't do the job expected of them, bad attitude, threatened other employees, rude behavior, etc. Committed a crime, stole something. Termination of an employee must be done for a legitimate reason in order to avoid a possible wrongful termination lawsuit. In addition to paying compensation and punitive damages in one of these lawsuits where the employer loses, in some cases, they can be charged for violating certain federal statutes. Legally, in order to cover yourself, you must first warn problem employees about their shortcomings and give them a chance to correct them. If they don't improve satisfactorily, you must give reasonable notice of termination, about 2 weeks, and pay them for that time regardless of whether you want them to work or not. If you want him to leave him immediately, draft up a check for the next 2 weeks, give it to him and tell him he's not welcome here anymore. First off, write out your job performance responsibilities and unsatisfactory job performance procedures clearly in your company manual and make all new employees read it so they can't later say they never got one or were never told to read it. Some companies have a test on the company manual that new workers must pass if they're to work there. Keep comprehensive records of all work incidents, both satisfactory and unsatisfactory work, lateness, misconduct, anger, shoddy work, etc. Offer a correction procedure in an escalated way. First, you file an unsatisfactory report, a written report describing their unsatisfactory behavior. Bring the employee in, tell him or her they screwed up, get them to read the report, sign it, then give them a copy. Tell him or her you will be watching them more carefully to see if they improve, which they must. In the next 3 months, they either ship up or continue in the same manner, whereupon you bring them in again and give them a formal warning, a more serious written report. This is their last chance. If they screw up, they're gone. Give the problem employee written warnings advising him or her of the standard of competence required. You must advise employee that their job is in jeopardy and tell him exactly what he or she must do to shape up. Give the employee a reasonable opportunity to improve. Give him adequate training or even retrain him if you must to cover your butt. When it's time for termination, you must show the employee and cover your butt at the same time exactly what he or she did that was so detrimental to the company and tell him that he was incompetent in his duties. In order to be legally covered, you have to show that you did not contribute materially to the employee's incompetence, that the incompetence is not temporary but an ongoing thing, and show that he or she does not have any recent positive evaluations, letters, salary increases, or bonuses that could contradict the termination. Evaluations for the past year or so should be all bad to corroborate the termination. Check company policy and the law to determine whether your grounds for termination are legal. Put it on the termination notice that he is being fired because his conduct goes against Rule 8, Clause 2, and cite any legal laws, if applicable. Conduct an exit interview to explain to the employee why he's being fired and explain why the company has a legal right to do this. The best way to do this is to have some packing boxes or garbage bags ready, have a security guard with you, then wait until the end of the day, tell him you want to see him in your office in 15 minutes. Hopefully, everyone will be gone by then so you can do it quickly to avoid him embarrassment and you a possible scene. Tell him, get him to sign the termination notice, tell him to pack his things immediately, have his paperwork and severance pay ready, then tell him he is not allowed on company property unless it's for official business. The termination contract should have everything relevant on it, like reasons for termination, severance pay amount, covenants regarding company secrecy, competition, and anything else relevant. If you are going to be fired, review your employment contract, find out who made the decision and why you are being fired, ask for a copy of your personnel file, think back to any oral promises made to you, request a meeting to negotiate your severance package, get it in writing, apply for unemployment insurance, take legal action if your employer is blacklisting you, return all company property and take legal action with a labor attorney if applicable. Sometimes, compassionate managers offer employees they're about to fire a chance to resign by mutual consent, which simply make it look better on their resumes and might give them a slightly better severance package with a few weeks more pay. If resigning from a job, do it properly with a courteous letter. The Worker Adjustment Retraining and Notice Act/WARN is for workers of plants that shut down. An employee who is still in the initial probationary period after being hired is not entitled to any notice. There may be statutory laws in your area about what to pay terminated employees upon their severance. Some employers give a few $100 bonus simply because they hope the employee will go away and not file a wrongful termination lawsuit, which always costs the employer money whether he wins or not. Generally, there is no legal obligation for a company to pay severance unless it's stated in the written employment contract or in the company manual. Where severance is offered, it should be consistent with the severances other employees in equal or similar positions get. If you are fired or terminated, Try not to accept the company's first offer and negotiate for more on the grounds of decency and fair play. Don't be aggressive and threatening. Just say you worked hard for the company, you deserve some payback since you're trying to raise 3 kids. Threaten to sue. If you ask for a lot, you will get some of what you asked for. Get it in writing. Don't accept a patronizing pat on the back with a mild comment about everything working out. If you want a good letter of reference, don't rely on your ex-boss's promises that he will write you one up. Write your own, give it to him and ask him to sign it. You have rights. Don't let them intimidate you into early retirement if you don't want it, particularly if early retirement causes you to lose large financial benefits that you would get if you stay on for a few more years. Read everything they give you before you sign it. If you're worried about getting sued for wrongful termination, consult an employment lawyer about the case. Try to be civil and when terminating people. Keep it simple and brief. Don't tell them their spazzes. Just say it didn't work out. They will find their niche in life elsewhere. Do the termination in private. Collect company property such as keys, equipment, or tools. Terminate the employee's purchasing privileges and company credit cards. If you're feeling generous, offer a letter of reference and help the individual in finding a new job. Most references in termination cases say only that the person worked for the company for the period specified. Legally, if they say more, they can be sued for wrongful termination whilst giving a positive recommendation or saying something negative about the employee. If you have nothing good to say, say nothing. You could offer to pay for a session with an executive recruiter, sometimes called outplacement support. Have all the paperwork ready, like his employment record, which you give him a copy of, payroll record, for unemployment insurance, pay him what you owe him in salary, severance benefits, and vacation pay. Notify the insurance carrier that he is no longer covered. You could tell other employees that Joe got fired, but they know anyway. Your best bet if somebody asks is just say, Joe won't be with us any longer. If the employee was terminated because of some big scandal or something like that, you might want to gather all employees for a meeting, tell them Joe was creating phony suppliers and cashing the checks he wrote to them and he will be charged criminally for embezzlement. It's your call whether it would be useful to tell your employees or not. Sometimes, if the employee is well liked and people don't know why he was terminated, it might be a good idea to tell the others, employees, customers, colleagues in other businesses, he was accessing child porn websites on his computer or whatever it was he was doing, just to clear the air. Try hashtag 658.311 or HF5549.5 at the library for books about hiring and firing from the manager's point of view. Firing from a manager's POV websites. allbusiness.com. allbusiness.com/hiring-firing-form/3472190-1.html, hiring and firing forms. amicobooks.org. bnet.com. cch.com. doingbusiness.org/explore topics/employing workers. employment-law.freeadvice.com/firing. nalo.com, legal books. uschamber.com, what are the major laws and legal restrictions that limit your right to fire? workerdaily.com. Getting fired. Job loss is a fact of life. It could be that the company has to downsize to stay alive. In companies with 50 or more employees, they have to give 60 days advance notice for a layoff. You could be a lousy worker, or the boss could simply think you're a jackass and not like you. Likability is probably more important than jobability on a primal level. If you're a conformist yes man, the boss will like you more than the maverick who always wants to do it his way and acts like an arrogant Mr. Know-it-all. Keep your feelers out all the time to sense the vibe about you from others. Are they excluding you, or are you part of the in crowd? Be sociable even if you don't like your coworkers or your boss. Before you can be fired, there is supposed to be a chain of progressive discipline a company puts a worker through to give him chances to improve before being fired. If it is a serious offense like violence, criminal activity, theft, etc., you can legally be fired on the spot. For sloppy work or a general bad attitude, you might be given a reprimand, formal warning, or a probationary period where you're scrutinized more closely than usual, and if you don't shape up, they have the paperwork documentation to get rid of you. Along with your employment contract, keep a paper record of all the work you do, all the memos you send, and all the paperwork of any hassles or disciplinary reports the boss gives you. Document all confrontations and personality conflicts. Even if the boss blames your performance, speak up if you think he just doesn't like you. If he's trying to force you out, stand some ground so he knows he can't run over you. Of course, you don't want to work where you're not wanted, but stand tough to get a good severance deal. Send him a memo with your conditions for termination. If he doesn't have a good reason to fire you, you have some leverage in getting a good severance package. Often, bosses try to get rid of employees they don't like but can't legally fire by giving them a new position, which is essentially a demotion away from the main action of the workplace with light, routine, almost meaningless work in order to demean the employee so much that he quits on his own. But when this happens, write him a letter telling him where he's violating his work contract with you. Tell him you're willing to leave but not without a good severance package. Start looking for a new job and talk to an employment lawyer immediately. If the company cries about losing money and tries to get away by offering you a modest settlement, don't be afraid to hire an employment lawyer and take legal action against them. If the company is taken over or goes bankrupt, contact an employment lawyer to see what your options are. If you don't particularly like to work somewhere, know the boss doesn't like you and the company is going nowhere, you can engineer your own termination by looking for another job and writing a letter to your boss saying you don't feel appreciated for your work and would like to talk to him about resolving the situation. When he invites you in, tell him you deserve a raise and a promotion, and when he says no, tell him you feel discriminated against because you're you and he doesn't like you, and tell him you will leave if he offers you a reasonably good severance package. Whatever you do, it's always a good idea to get professional advice from an employment lawyer. Rather than lose your cool or let the boss intimidate you, negotiate your way out of it. There are compensatory laws in place to help you get your just due. Prepare your demands in writing, give them to your boss, then he will write out a counter offer and you might go back and forth for a while. As long as you reach a mutual agreement, it's just part of the game. The most common reasons for getting fired are: can't do the job, aren't keeping up with changes in the field, don't get along with people, too slow and clumsy, absenteeism, lateness. The most common reason that's illegal is that the boss simply doesn't like you, and if this is the case, he will always find some way to get rid of you that looks legal. If you're fired unjustly and the boss doesn't think you deserve a severance package, you could fight it, but it's a tedious process of going to civil court and there are no guarantees. If you win, you could win good damages for wrongful dismissal. Beyond compensatory damages, there are punitive damages which could be high to punish the company: damages for mental distress, libel, slander, loss of reputation, discrimination, and violation of contract. If you have a good job, be a good worker so you don't have to worry about getting fired. When an employment contract goes bad, about the worst thing that can happen besides getting fired is to lose severance pay. Look back over the contract to see if the employer can withhold severance pay for any reasons. Follow the rules meticulously and build up proof that you're doing a good job. Most companies have a procedure they have to follow before firing you. You have rights about being fired unjustly. If you feel you were fired unjustly, contact your local American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU.org, for advice. They can't promise you job security then fire you. Read your employment contract over to see if the company violated it. Ask your boss for the exact reason and determine if it's fair, then act accordingly. Find out if it's personal or professional. They just can't fire you because they don't like you. There has to be a legitimate basis of incompetency. Ask to see your file to determine how your performance evaluations were in the past few years. If they were good, there's an inconsistency there. Negotiate to get a fair severance package. You don't have to take early retirement if you don't want to. If your boss tries to fire you unjustly, get samples of your work and ask other employees to speak up for you, although this may be hard since they're worried about their jobs too. Employers aren't allowed to fire you if you're on the verge of getting benefits for time spent on the job and they want to save some money. You can't be fired for taking time off from work due to a legitimate injury or medical illness. You can't be fired for whistleblowing, Whistleblower Protection Act, maternity leave, National Guard, jury duty or voting. If your boss is trying to fire you because of something like you're nearing 10 years in the company and that means he will have to pay retirement benefits, that's illegal and you can fight it in court. If you're going anyway, get what you can out of it. Use the last few days to make long-distance calls, steal pencils, etc. Apply for unemployment immediately. It's a two-way street. The boss isn't always wrong. Make sure you're pulling your weight and aren't just a chronic winner because he could have his paper trail and witnesses too. There are mandatory retirement laws such that even if you're capable and want to work, you still have to retire. When you start your new job, learn from the mistakes of the past. If you really want to keep the job, become a great, new happily motivated person, but start looking around for other jobs on the side. Books about employee issues are at hashtag 331.25 or HF5549 at the library. Try hashtag 658.311 or HF5549.5 at the library for books about hiring and firing from the manager's point of view. Getting fired websites. rightonthemoney.org/show/401_LAOFF, Layoff Survival Kit. AmicoMBooks.com. AskTheHeadhunter.com/howgettingfired.htm. CareerPath.com/advice/19460/-getting-fired-was-the-best-that-ever-happened-to-me. CareerPlanner.com/career-articles/so_you_lost_your_job.htm. Cartoonstalk.com/directory/g/getting_fired.asp. CourtTV.com/legalcafe/work/fired/fired_links.html. HispanicUCSS.com/hispanic-getting-fired.htm. IUsedToBelieve.com/grown_UPS/work/getting_fired. KissMyEfrekEliteAskGoodbye.com. SimplyFired.com, true, usually funny or surprising stories about losing a job. WorkplaceFairness.org/getting-fired. WrongfulDischarge1.blogspot.com. Quit gracefully. Take this job and shove it. If you have a new job offer for more money and better benefits, don't just quit your present job right off without notice or in any sort of impolite way, because your new job could backfire or you might need these people someday for a new job or a reference, so don't burn your bridges. If you're really good about it, your boss might make you an offer to keep you. Don't do anything rash until you're positive you've got the new job. Oral agreements can be taken back. Written agreements can be cancelled. You could sue them in civil court, but you still don't have a job. Don't leave your old boss hanging. Give him a week or two notice and finish up whatever you were working on. If it's a formal, white-collar job, give him a letter of resignation along with telling him. If it's any other type of job, just tell him you're quitting. He'll want to know why, so tell him why. Take care of stuff like pension payments, health insurance, unused vacation days, retirement savings plans, etc. Be friendly with co-workers. Tell them you're quitting and where you're going. In white-collar jobs, there is often the formality of an exit interview. This is on the books in virtually every human resources manual. I don't get it myself. If you're leaving, you're leaving. Why do you have to talk to your ex-boss? He or she is supposed to wish you good luck and say no hard feelings, life is a game, I understand what's going on. They conduct these regardless of whether you're getting fired or quitting on your own. Most people quit for either of two reasons. Got a better job or am changing careers. Hate this job. It's horrible. If you hate the job and it's a big company, you could try for a transfer rather than just leaving outright. Quitting a job websites. I-resign.com, non-quitting options, work leave, vacations, sample. Resignation letters. Restaurantvoice.com/career-a/job_quitting_etiquette.html. change.monster.com/article/leaving_job. associatedcontent.com/article/17748/how_to_quit_your_job.html. blogthings.com/should you quit your job quiz. careers.wsj.com, quit gracefully. fastcompany.com, how to quit your job. iquit.org. I-resign.com. youtube.com, type in quit your job. Voluntary termination/resigning. Voluntary termination happens when an employee decides to leave the company for whatever reason. He writes a termination letter, hands it in, usually offering to work for the next 2 weeks as a courtesy while the boss looks for a replacement. This is called a notice period, but the boss might want him out of there immediately, so he will tell him he might as well get out. Bosses often do this because they don't want people on the outs hanging around polluting the company with their vibes. If the employee offers to work during the notice period but the boss doesn't want him, and it is a rule in the company manual, the boss is obligated to pay the employee's salary and benefits for those 2 weeks anyway. Other than that, they agree to a final settlement of pay. There might be an exit interview where each side sucks up to the other in case they need each other at some point in the future, and that's it. Good bosses and good workers are very wary about burning bridges because they never know when they will come across this person again. If the person is leaving because he got a better job, the boss might make a new offer in order to try to keep the employee. All in all, an exit interview provides the employer with a chance to find out why the employee is leaving and may learn something about his own company that he might be able to improve upon. I-resign.com. sample-resignation-letters.com. Chapter 2. Firing Issues 1. Discipline someone. When you hire someone, give them a copy of the rules, their job description and a termination clause in their contract. If they screw up once or twice, discipline them via probationary period, letter of misconduct, and keep increasing the severity of the punishment in 3 stages until they reach termination. Do a performance evaluation every 6 months so they know exactly where they stand and there can be no uncertainty that they were warned to improve. Use constructive discipline as though you're on the employee's side and want to help him correct his problem, even if you want to get rid of him. There are several situations where you can fire an employee immediately. They are: incompetence, doesn't do the job; violence, vulgarity, insolence, insubordination, serious misconduct, theft, dishonesty, fraud, intoxication, general screw up, always messing things up, chronic lateness, takes too many days off. Document all incidents as they come up. A mean look won't cut it because it's subjective, but action things can be documented, like he spit on the floor and threw the broom against the wall. A bad attitude by itself is just an observation. It has to be backed up with specific events or videotape evidence, like one company caught their employee on video scratching up the walls on purpose, another one destroyed products, etc. You might want to talk to a labor lawyer before you fire someone. Don't fire anyone based on another person's word. Always get both sides of the story and get proof before you act. Many malicious people will lie about fellow employees they don't like. Don't tell a person in advance that you will let him go, because you will just create a bad, bitter apple. Fire him and get rid of him as quickly as possible. Have his termination check ready and be fair, otherwise he may try to get you back somehow. After you fire him, don't breathe a word of it to others except to say he was terminated and that's it. There are laws regarding layoffs too when they occur in RESP once to accompany downsizing or restructuring. You either have to give them ample notice and or some money to compensate for the loss, generally a week's pay for every year they've worked with you. Constructive dismissal. Constructive dismissal is a term used to denote a situation where the company manager or managers want to get rid of somebody but they either have no just cause to fire him or her legally or they don't want to pay a severance package so they do nasty things while staying legal about it. They might reduce him to puppet, in effect demoting him, putting him in a corner office with nothing meaningful to do. They might send him to a small, obscure company office or subsidiary in the middle of nowhere. They might give him trivial work or very difficult, tedious work to get him frustrated enough to quit on his own. If you sense that this is happening to you, write down your concerns and see an employment lawyer about it. Hiring and firing at will. Hiring and firing at will, although not very popular among employees or governments for that matter, nevertheless still exists because that's the way business is done. Except for large companies that are bound by federal laws, most other employment is at will. The employer hires you with the presumption that as long as you do your job well and the job exists, he will keep you, but unless you have an employment contract, there are no guarantees, and even then, there are still no guarantees. The company could fold, move, or fire a bunch of people in cost-cutting measures and there is nothing much you can do about it. The concept is that if an employer hires you at will, it gives him the right to fire you anytime he wants with or without cause without prior notice. In the states that honor employment at will, these laws are only valid as long as the employer doesn't nullify them with some other company regulation that gives them more rights and if they don't violate state and federal work statutes. Employment at will is only valid when the company neither states nor implies any employer-employee rights regarding terminations. There are exceptions to firing at will, such as firing someone in violation of the company's employment contract. Abusive discharge, the employer fires someone either for revenge against something the employee that was not wrong, he just didn't like it, or the employer decides he doesn't like the employee anymore and terminates him. Firing in violation of government laws granting employees certain rights with respect to leave. Firing based on discrimination. Even with at-will policies in place, many employees are suing employers for unjust termination and winning, so the best advice I can give is don't fire people without giving the benefit of your disciplinary process and document reasons why you think they're not performing up to standard. When you hire someone and give them an at-will employment agreement which they sign, they supposedly agree to this arrangement and the boss can fire them anytime he wants, but defense lawyers have fought successfully against this rule in a number of cases, such as firing for discrimination contrary to discrimination laws, retaliation for a number of reasons such as whistleblowing, filing a workers' compensation claim, refusing to do illegal acts, organizing workers for a union and other lawful activities which management might frown on. Firing a long-term employee just before pension kicks in violation of the implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing. Violate implied contracts, promises you made to the employee. Other things such as the employee declares bankruptcy, has AIDS, looks sickly, is pregnant, is having his wages garnished for one reason or another, usually child support or in a substance abuse program. At-will termination differs from for-cause termination because it can be legally done without a just cause. Some states frown on this practice and have outlawed it. If you sign an at-will agreement and feel you have been fired unjustly, get an employment lawyer and battle it out with the plaintiff's attorney. It could go either way. Every case is different. Employers who want to use at-will agreements should make them as clear and upfront as possible. Don't bury them in the paperwork. If you have a poor employee, even if you have the right to at-will termination, use progressive discipline in order to give him the chance to shape up or ship out. Documenting problem employees. The first way to deal with problem employees is at the recruitment stage. Do a good, thorough job of analyzing the individual face-to-face and do a background check. Secondly, clearly state goals and objectives so there's no ambiguity about job responsibilities. This is why a company manual is so important, so that everything is there crystal clear. If you have to train someone for the job, the more formal the training program is with a test at the end, the better for you, the employer, because if a new employee can't pass the tests, you can cut him off right there. If the boss thinks you're generally slack but not a really bad person, when you go in for your purse, they will hijack you with some kind of unsatisfactory performance report / progressive discipline report along with a formal warning, which is a paper they make you sign saying you realize you haven't been meeting the standard and have 3 months to shape up, otherwise you will be placed on more severe probation and could be terminated. The most common types of work problems are as follows: lateness, absenteeism, body odor, bad attitude, antisocial, immature, likes to embarrass others, tells inappropriate jokes, doesn't do the work, does the work half-assed, misses deadlines, lack of skills, doesn't understand what's required of him, doesn't have correct training or proper tools, personality conflict with boss or workers, family or personal problems, health problems, mental health problems, smokes in no smoking areas, drinks alcohol at lunch. The worst thing you as a boss can do is ignore problem behavior. Everybody has bad days. Let occasional things slide, but if it's continuous, be professional. Document all aspects of the issue, which means write out incident reports anytime you see bad behavior and get other employees to write out what they witnessed. Talk the problem over. Listen to the employee's side. The first few times, don't impose disciplinary measures. Give him a chance to correct the problem on his own. If he doesn't get the hint, you have to write out a specific report called something like formal warning, unsatisfactory performance, or probationary period, where you explain where he's a screw up and what he must do to improve, otherwise further action will be taken and he could be terminated. Tell him he will be monitored more closely and meet with you every 2 weeks for the next 3 months to discuss his progress or lack of it. At the end of that time, you will review the case and make a decision as to whether to keep him on or go further down the path of termination, usually imposing a more severe do or die probationary period. At the end of the period, you either tell him he is much improved, keep it up and get back to work, tell him you're still uncertain so he will be on probation for the next year, or tell him he doesn't cut it so he's gone. Chapter 3. Firing Issues 2. Illegal termination. There are many laws to protect workers from being fired unfairly, even if they were hired without a written contract, generally called hired at will. Being hired at will should give the manager the right to terminate you whenever he wants, but employment attorneys have successfully fought these cases in recent years. To stay legal, employers should stick with the progressive discipline route as already discussed, such that they have a paper trail of documentation in order to justify firing the employee with just cause. Employers just can't fire people for a phony reason in order to save themselves some money for the real reason. For instance, there was this one employer who liked to keep employees for about 15 years but somehow found a reason to fire them all before they had 20 years in order to keep from paying them pension benefits. Most people took it without fighting, but a friend of mine didn't. He sued the guy, proved that he didn't do anything wrong to justify being fired, and proved this guy had a track record of firing people shortly before their 20 years were up. If you signed a written employment contract, reread it to see exactly what they say about termination. Many employers routinely violate their own contracts when terminating somebody. As you work for any company, keep all copies of performance reviews, especially if they're good, and any other citations you receive. You can't have good performance reviews for 5 years, then all of a sudden, your boss calls you an incompetent slacker and fires you. It's not consistent. Your track record proves you're not slack. Unless you have become a desperate drug addict lately, your boss is in the wrong. Companies can't fire you to deprive you of vested pension rights or other expected financial benefits. Companies can't fire you because of illness, pregnancy, or jury duty. Companies can't fire you because you have been a whistleblower or complained about a safety violation or ethical wrongdoing. Companies can't fire you on a whim just because they feel like it. They need a legitimate reason. Companies can't fire you because of age, gender, or minority status. Companies can't fire a large number of workers and slash or close a plant without a minimum of 60 days notice or 60 days severance pay. Companies can't fire you if you received a written or verbal promise of job security for X amount of time. You have to prove this though, which could be hard if the guy promised you over the phone that he would keep you for a year no matter what, then when you got there, he decides he doesn't like you and lets you go. Record phone calls and get witnesses. Companies can't fire you with inconsistent disciplinary action that is much harsher than others who have committed similar transgressions. If Joe Blow is caught drinking beer on the job and gets a warning, but then you're caught and you get fired, that's a case of inconsistent disciplinary actions. An employee cannot be fired for the following reasons: bankruptcy status, disclosure of a condition of illiteracy, enrollment in an alcohol or drug abuse program, called out for military service as member of the Reserve or National Guard, infected with HIV or AIDS, pregnancy, childbirth, or related medical conditions, refusal to take a lie detector test, wage garnishment such as with alimony payments, working with the union. An employer can't fire a long-time employee for a trivial reason just before he's eligible for accrued benefits like pension. Fired due to a legitimate illness or absence from work including maternity/paternity leave. You can't be fired for public policy like sitting on a jury during jury duty or not showing up to work on a legal holiday. You can't be fired for serving in the military or for voting. Whistleblowing/Whistleblowers Protection Acts, both state and federal. Attempting to unionize, complaining about health and safety violations. Off-work legal activism/activities of any kind. Fired swiftly in violation of company firing rules. Massive layoff without a minimum of 60 days notice. Fired after a verbal promise of job security or other inducements that went unfulfilled. Fired in violation of union rules. If you're part of a union, refer to their collective bargaining agreement. The state laws are all different. If you feel you've been wrongfully terminated, contact a local branch of the EEOC, possibly a legal aid service in your area, a labor lawyer, or check out state labor law at a library. Some of the most common wrongful firings are: legal contract which promised a certain duration of employment. Promissory estoppel, an employer induces you to take a job which means a loss for you like relocation, quitting another good job. Violation of a covenant of good faith and fair dealing. If the company wants you to resign for one reason or another, don't sign anything without you or your lawyer reading it over. You may be waiving your claim to unemployment and other severance benefits. With a resignation or termination, the company may offer you a severance deal. Refuse their first offer. Negotiate for more before you're willing to resign. Wrongful dismissal/wrongful termination. A lot of companies get sued for wrongful dismissal. The employee thinks he or she was terminated for unreasonable grounds, and often, beyond suing the company, individual managers are sued as well for what is sometimes called bad faith. There is some case law supporting these types of lawsuits, but as of now, no specific statutes. Wrongful-termination-lawyer.com. Protect yourself in case of termination. Even the greatest workers lose their jobs when the company downsizes or goes bankrupt. If you're in daily fear that your job could be the next one to go, create your backup now. You have 5 main options. Go to school on the side, learn a skill. Take e-learning classes. Look for a higher paying job right now. Get a part-time job. Downsize. Buy a smaller house, smaller car, get rid of a bunch of stuff. Live simpler. Use the money-saving tips in my other books. Avoid the stress-anger trap. Stay cool. Maybe your wife or one of your kids can get a job to help out. You create your future. Don't wait until you get laid off then can't make mortgage payments. Concerns about job security. If there's a recession or hard times and they're laying off people one by one, the job experts say go see your boss and gently ask him where you stand in the pecking order. I say don't bother. Keep working hard, but at the same time, prepare for the next chapter of your life. Either take courses online or at night while working to upgrade, or go into a new trade, or start looking and interviewing for a new job. Don't live in fear of losing your job. Do everything you can while you have the job to be ready in case you lose it. To me it seems weak or brown-nosy to go into the boss's office and snivel about how much you need your job more than anyone else does when you don't even know if you're on the chopping block. I say keep your mouth shut and keep working. Chapter 4. Downsizing/layoffs. Downsizing/layoffs 1. In the United States, downsizing means cutting employees. In Japan, it means everybody stays but they all take a pay cut. Technically speaking, a layoff is a downsizing of the entire company due to a major problem with the company's business or the economy. It's not an individual matter where you're firing an individual for insubordination or something like that. Sometimes it's impossible to avoid cutting your workforce. The biggest problem after the layoff is what is the morale of employees left. When you plan for a layoff, get your financial obligations to terminated employees straight so you're ready with the checks when you lower the boom, in order to keep them happy and to get them out the door as fast as possible without letting their grumbling affect the remaining workers too much. If you employ more than 100 people and plan big layoffs or plant closings, you will be subject to the Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act/WARN. You have to give 60 days notice to employees before you let them go or show cause why you can't. If you have a workforce larger than 20, you're probably bound by the Consolidated Omnibus Budget Reconcilia Act/COBRA, which means they have the right to continued access to their health insurance coverage for about 18 months as long as they continue to make monthly payments. If you have a pension plan or a severance plan, refer to the Employee Retirement Income Security Act/ERISA for more information. Before you proceed with a layoff, run it by your accountant and your lawyer to make sure you're staying legal. Downsizing creates anxiety. Everybody's afraid of getting fired. Give your good employees long-term contracts to keep them happy. The best way to get rid of people is to offer generous terms, a good severance package, an outplacement service to help them find a new job, and early retirement options. If you start a firing bloodbath, your employee morale will plummet to zero. People, above all else, care about their work security and benefits. Offer these to good employees plus opportunities for advancement. If you have to downsize, at least treat your workers with dignity during the firing process. The traditional path of being a stable company with employees guaranteed their jobs for life if they want is all but gone for a number of reasons. There are all kinds of reasons for downsizing and layoffs. Foreign competition, other competition, higher energy or raw material costs. Investors aren't happy, so they bring in a hatchet man as the new CEO who lays a bunch of people off, get the stock price up, then they sell. Investors want quick money. Legitimate turnaround or restructuring attempt. Merger. Technology and productivity improvement. A layoff as opposed to a termination is not a personal decision. It is caused by a situation in the company which makes the boss decide it's best to reduce the workforce or eliminate some positions. You're not gunning to get rid of a certain employee. You're downsizing as a business decision. After you decide to eliminate a certain position or several positions, there are rules you must follow as to who you will lay off. You just can't eliminate the person you like the least. You're supposed to eliminate the person or people who are least qualified to take on the job responsibilities of the positions that are left. The general criteria are: seniority, time on the job; status, temporary employees go before full-time employees; merit, education level, general skill, attitude, attendance, etc. And, if you eliminate a position and get rid of an employee, then 3 months later recreate the position, that could be construed as an illegal termination in disguise and could get you in trouble. A year is considered the minimum to wait if you don't want to get charged for illegal termination. Some employers try to lay off substandard workers rather than go through the entire probation termination process. The problem with this is that in legal terms, a layoff is the elimination of a position or positions, not the elimination of certain individuals. Be careful if you take this route. It could backfire you in the form of a lawsuit. In general, if you have bad employees, eliminate them the proper way, by going through a disciplinary process. If a company decides to eliminate certain positions or departments and replace them by outsourcing the work, hiring independent contractors, unless the employees have a union with some kind of agreement in place, there's nothing they can legally do about it. When terminating employees, you are obligated to provide a final W-2 form for tax purposes. If the employee requests it, you have to provide it within 30 days of the final workday. If not, you should give them out in January along with all the other ones for your remaining staff. There are some possible feasible alternatives to a layoff. Offer a cut in pay. Offer fewer hours per week. Ask employees to come up with solutions on how to increase business, job share, develop a new product line, or find other ways to stay in business profitably. Check with your state unemployment insurance office to see if your people can work for you part-time and get some unemployment insurance at the same time. Help employees be more employable by subsidizing education outside the company and offer job searching classes as well as an outplacement agency, which is basically an employment counselor/recruiter hybrid who help outgoing employees find worthy new jobs. Even for employees you're not laying off, give them some kind of career/job training so they will know what's going on should something ever happen to them. Set up workers at retraining programs in community colleges and trade schools and send them to the state employment office to register for employment and learn how to use the system. Be as open and honest as you can about the layoffs and what the situation will be afterwards. The more involved your employees are in decisions about the company, the more motivated they will be to try to make a go of it. The Worker Adjustment and Retraining Notification Act/WARN Act applies to companies with 100+ employees. Employers must notify them 60 days before a layoff and offer other compensations like retraining into another career. Getting rid of bad employees is justifiable, but layoffs are often beyond everybody's control. The customers aren't buying, the economy is in a downturn. The best way to do it is like a man. Call a meeting, tell them straight up what's going on, tell them about pay, packing their stuff, retraining, etc. If you offer an outplacement service, tell them about it. KennedyInfo.com, 800-531-0007, sells the book The Directory of Outplacement and Career Management Firms, which lists firms that do this type of service for companies laying people off. If the company is any good, it will offer the departing workers some severance pay, training and re-employment assistance. Downsizing/layoffs too. The major forms of downsizing are as follows. Cut the dividends and profit payouts. Reduce the salaries and bonuses of the top managers. Reduce management staff. Offer early retirement to some workers. Offer a severance pay buyout option to some workers. Ask some workers to take a sabbatical, unpaid leave from the job. Reduce worker staff. Ask workers to take a cut in pay. The ones left behind will have to do more work in an uncertain climate, wondering when their time is coming. Psychologically and spiritually, downsizing could be the worst thing for a company because right when it wants to get more competitive, efficient, and productive, it puts a dagger into the morale of its workers by making them an angry, depressed, cynical bunch feeling the company has betrayed them, that they're just expendable pawns and could easily follow the same fate as their recently laid off compatriots. Even managers don't have job security. How do you expect to help and inspire your workers when you have survivor anxiety too? A lot of managers feel guilty and bear the brunt of scorn from their workers when the truth is that the decision was made in some big shot's office far away from them. The best way to deal with all this turmoil if you sincerely want to keep the company going is to have a big meeting of all layoff survivors and their managers, explain that upper management did what they felt was right. You know they're all angry and depressed. The middle managers are taking a lot of slack from both sides, but tell them you want the company to get healthy again. They have to put the past behind, look to the future. You really want the company to succeed. Offer a counseling service for workers who feel depressed, angry, stressed out. Tell them to take it easy on their managers. Offer something for their own interests, like a profit sharing plan next year or a $1,000 bonus in their 401(k) if they work hard for the next year. Leave them with the impression that this is the way it is. You're trying to make the company better for the future. There's even a mental health medical term coming onto the scene called layoff survivor sickness, even though there's a lot of denial in it. So offer the employees who stay some kind of counseling, a stress class, maybe a monthly forum where they can go and air out their problems with members of the management team. In general, the average worker gets complacent in his job, figures he will be there for life, so he shuts everything else out until the company is in danger and his livelihood is threatened. The best solution is for a company to constantly offer employee incentives to educate themselves and offer seminars on how to be successful, how to succeed in the world, so that the worker can buffer himself from being so dependent on his company should something happen. Some companies will pay 50% of the tuition of any college class any employee takes in any field, no questions asked, or they offer upgrading in their field by contracting with a technical school to come on site and offer nightly classes every week or something like that. Offer workshops in investing, home buying, etc. in order to empower the workers to be responsible for their own lives, not be like a bunch of immature kids looking to father the company for all their answers, like the citizens of Russia were after communism fell. Encourage them to keep their work skills up to date for their own sake. You don't have to tell them it's in case the company goes bust, but make it a healthy ideology that you want empowered workers to stay current with the technology. In some ways, layoff survivor sickness is like post-traumatic stress syndrome, in that the survivors feel guilty they're still there and others gone, while bearing unresolved anger at the company for having done this to them. You have to engender an attitude which breaks them away from the past legacy of the company the way it was. They have to realize their identities are separate and distinct from the company. They have to be strong and flexible enough to create a life outside of the company and leave to find another job if they must. They have to enter into a new uncharted period of optimism and growth. There are generally 4 stages to doing a downsizing the right way without alienating the workers. Do it compassionately with plenty of advice and time for retiring or looking for another job. Have your big meeting, send memos around telling them you relate, feel their pain, that it's a sad situation all around, you understand their feelings, and offer some kind of grief counseling and a bit of time to get over it. Come out with your new paradigm of a new company for a new era. Get an attitude of optimism and positive change going. Put incentives in place to get them motivated, like profit sharing, upgrading skills, new uniforms, Friday afternoons off, a new break lounge, free peanuts and soda, paying for 50% of their children's college tuition, etc. If you lie once and they find out, you lose all your credibility, so stay straight with them all the time. Offer some kind of incentives to employees to enrich their lives outside of the job, like free memberships at the local gym, free passes to the movies or the local campground, or free classes through the local continuing education program, simply to get them somewhat away from the codependency relationship with the company and see there are other worlds out there. Give the employees more power in deciding how the company should be run. Give them more autonomy. Get rid of the old dinosaurs. Promote based on achievement, not on seniority. Offer bonuses for increasing group production. Make it easy for them to leave and try their luck elsewhere. The more new blood that comes in after a lay-off, the better it is, because they're fresh, untainted by the negative past. Speak and act from the heart. Be a people person. Make it look as though you really care about the company and the workers and not just the bottom line. Tell them you will do the best you can, but no company can promise lifetime security anymore. Try hashtag 302.35 or HM131 at the library for books about organizational changes. Try hashtag 658.311 or HF5449.5 for books about layoffs. Downsizing websites / layoff websites. Joblossguide.net, Job Loss Guide Network. cpsr.org/previous site program workplace cpu.009.html. sasknetwork.ca/html/employers workplace downsizing.htm. uha.com/report/headsup/who63.htm.